Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the ThePCelitist. My name is Woodsie. Today I have a subject that has to do with art and video games and kind of the nature of it. We're going to get into that in a second. I just want to thank everyone who left comments on the last video, Singularity especially, and Avioto especially. I had a little debate with another commenter, which kind of quickly, as he even pointed out, would devolve into kind of a discussion about the idea of good art versus bad art. Now, if you do continue to listen to this channel, we will in the future have discussions about the idea of good art versus bad art, because I actually do believe in the idea that there is bad art and there is good art, and that's a whole rabbit hole to be moved on to later. That is another discussion. But sometimes I'm just going to have subjects that have the presupposition that there is such thing as good art and bad art, and if you don't buy that first premise, then the whole thing may be forfeit. Or if you're not even interested in discussing it, I'm not saying you're not. I'm just saying is that sometimes I've had discussions with people who don't even want to move beyond that for just the sake of argument. That, like, I will not accept for even a moment that there could be bad art. So be it. Then our discussion is over. But thank you everyone who did comment. I do appreciate it. This discussion is something I've been thinking about recently a lot, and there was an article that kind of just brought it to light again. And the idea here is that what I'm wondering is, so I believe my premise first is that games are an art form. They are artistic, and then some of them become pieces of art, like they're masterpieces. I don't believe every game rises to the level of like a great artwork. You know, it is artistic, all of it, but does every game like rise to that level? Like it is encapsulated. You can frame it kind of like this is a piece of art, the way it is, never to be touched. Now, video gaming is like kind of is a new medium, and I like it so much. For one of the reasons is that it's an art form that encompasses all other art forms. So it's I mean, even beyond that, it's a visual art form, it's an audio art form, and it directly requires the player to put input, the viewer or the subject to put input in to get something out of it. So it's also like a mechanical feat on top of the fact that it's also a bunch of art happening, you know? So I think that like symphony of things happening, of a feat of engineering and graphics and art styles and music, and storytelling and dialogue. It's like everything. It's everything. It can be everything. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes the developer chooses not to try to encompass all things, but there's a lot of great games out there that are telling a narrative. They're doing all things at once, and that's why I find it so engrossing and cool. The thing I'm wondering is I kept thinking about this, is that we have like a lot of remakes in the works now. There's I mean, the big one that just came out. I never played Dead Space. I probably should have, but the remake just came out and everyone says it's a great remake. And I'm wondering, I would argue to the nth degree that games can be works of art. Do we undermine the medium when we're just kind of happily just remake a game? Or is that just another iteration of that game, and, you know, just because they remake it it doesn't erase the old one. It doesn't erase the original, right? And I think there's like, just like movies, there's sometimes a story or something that is made once, and then the remake is the thing that's considered the classic. Like, I guess one of the more common examples would be The Thing. You know, John Carpenter's The Thing is the one everyone kind of like points to, but there was like a 1950s The Thing, which is like based on the same book, possibly. I don't know. And all artwork is like subject to like censorship and things being changed in it and edits. I think the Sistine Chapel was even edited, you know, later on. So, you know, every kind of medium has been subject to this. You know, Star Wars famously, right, has been edited and re-edited to the point where it's like frustrating to watch the original movies. So like, I'm wondering if, I think of it in two ways. Either one, the fact that we iterate on it just like every other art form cements it as an art form, because like everything's kind of been subject to it. But is there like a blasé nature to the way we do it in video games? So we just remake it, just update the graphics, like no big deal. Like it's just like, it's because it's such a product. Does that undermine the idea of its ability to stand on its own as an art form? I just keep thinking about it, because it seems like we're just so willing to just remake stuff, you know. Even things that I thought were like kind of immune to remaking, like to me, I think Monkey Island is like a classic game to me. It's a classic. Is it a masterful piece of art? Maybe. I think you could argue it. It's like one of those, just such a classic point and click adventure game. And then the update, they did a remake, and good for them, they kept the original intact and then just had like an overlay if you wanted a more updated graphic scheme. And there's also another complex nature to it, because you have the player also being involved. So it's not an isolated piece of artwork. It's not something that sits on a wall and it's for the masses to come and admire it or not, see the beauty in it or not. You have to actually take part in a video game. You have to actually experience it, right? So you have a game. Let's just use. So Resident Evil 4 is like getting a remake, and the article I was like, should have mentioned this way earlier. The article I was reading, which I'll put it in the description, was basically that they're redoing it, and the guys who are in charge of redoing it were actually questioning themselves on like, can we even remake a game that was so masterfully done in the first place? And I think that's a really great way to start. Like, if you're gonna make a remake, like, that gives me a lot of hope that the game is good, because I loved Resident Evil 4. I was not a big Resident Evil fan. Growing up, I had my PC and I had Nintendo systems, and Resident Evil games did not generally crop up on Nintendo systems. I always felt like my PC and my computer and like PlayStation and Xbox, there was like too much overlap for it to be worth it to me. I'd rather just have my computer, and then Nintendo stuff was just like isolated on Nintendo on an island. So like, I felt like I got all the worlds of the things I wanted. So Resident Evil 4, I saw the first footage of it, and I kind of immediately felt like, this looks like a special game for some reason. I bought it. I only had like maybe 10 games on my GameCube, and that was one of them, and I absolutely adored it. So I think it's a great place to start, that the developers are like, man, can we even remake this and do it justice? And I kept thinking, like, I don't know, can you? Like, is the first game a work of art? Is it, if you were a purist, do you only play the original? Because I've read about Dead Space, and people are saying that you can just like the remake is better, and a horror game too. There's another aspect to this, especially games that go into the realistic visual look, is you want to have a certain scare factor to the player. You want a certain atmosphere, and if the graphics aren't, the original game was going for something that like akin to realism, and that you can only achieve so much, it seems only natural that you would then remake it with even better visuals, not just sharper visuals, but better visuals. But I just keep coming back to this question: does it undermine the art form? Maybe not. I really don't have an answer. I don't have like a specific like resolution or conclusion to this. It's just something I kept asking, and I'm throwing this out there for anyone who might have some thoughts on it, because I think it's an interesting subject. The thing I want to like also point out that I think is interesting in this conversation is, there's lots of pixel graphic games, and that's like, now that's just like a visual choice. It's a visual choice to just make it pixel graphics, like The Last Night, and there's another really cool one that has like great pixel graphics that I'm really interested in. But it's interesting, like any kind of stylized choice you make now, it kind of makes you immune to the remake, because you chose a specific graphical look. Like, the game is supposed to look like this. There's no way to update it really anymore. It's just, it looks like this. Like, it doesn't benefit by any kind of remake. Maybe other than like running on later systems when we're in like quantum computing and everything. But like, I just think it's interesting that if you choose a stylized way of looking at like a stylized graphic, then you're kind of immune to it. I think even going back to like Mario 64, I think that game still looks good. Like, I look at I think it would benefit from like a higher resolution. But for the most part, I think it still looks good. But then I heard Metroid Prime was getting a remake, and that game could use, I think, a coat of paint on it, but nothing else. Change nothing else. Anyway, this was just kind of something I kept thinking about, and that's the question. Do our willingness to just remake something, does it undermine the art form, or is it just like a movie, like updating the resolution and cleaning up the film and representing it for 4K? Is that what we're doing? I don't know. I'm curious on your thoughts. I appreciate it. Any comments are appreciated. Anything you do to the video and interact is great. I will see you on the next one.